There's a study that interviewed over 1,000 people in their final weeks of life, and when asked what they regretted most, 94% gave the same answer. And here's what's disturbing. It had nothing to do with the things they did wrong. It was about what they never did at all. Right now, if you're in your 30s, 40s, or even 50s, you're standing at a fork in the road. Down one path is a life where you'll look back at 70 with satisfaction and peace. Down the other is a life filled with the kind of regrets that keep elderly people awake at 3 in the morning. And the terrifying part? Most people don't realize which path they're on until it's too late to turn around. I've spent the last year interviewing dozens of people over 70, reading thousands of testimonials from hospice workers, and studying the psychology of regret. What I discovered is that life regrets aren't random. They follow specific, predictable patterns. And if you understand these patterns now, you can architect your life to avoid them entirely. So today, I'm going to walk you through the 5 most common regrets that haunt people in their 70s and beyond. And more importantly, I'm going to show you exactly how to prevent each one while you still have time. Here's something most people don't realize until they're much older. The version of success you're chasing right now probably isn't even yours. It was handed to you by your parents, your culture, your social media feed, your college major, or that one successful person you met at 22 who seemed to have it all figured out. And you've been running toward their finish line ever since, never stopping to ask if it's where you actually want to go. The people I interviewed who struggled most with this regret all described the same experience. They climbed their ladder successfully, they achieved the prestigious job title, bought the impressive house, earned the respect of their industry, and then, somewhere between 60 and 70, they looked around and realized they had spent 40 years building someone else's dream life. The partner at the law firm who realized he actually hated practicing law but loved teaching. The successful surgeon who wanted to be a wildlife photographer. The executive who dreamed of opening a small bookstore but thought it wasn't impressive enough. Here's what makes this regret so painful. It's not about failure. It's about succeeding at the wrong thing. It's about being really, really good at climbing a ladder and then discovering it's leaning against a wall you never wanted to reach. And unlike other regrets, this one comes with a special kind of torture because you can't even console yourself with, "At least I tried." You did try. You succeeded. You just succeeded at something that didn't actually matter to you. The psychology behind this is fascinating. There's a concept called the looking-glass self, where we form our identity based on how we think others perceive us. In your 20s and 30s, when you're establishing your career and social position, this external validation feels incredibly important. You make decisions based on what will impress others, what will make your parents proud, what will look good on your resume, and slowly, imperceptibly, you start confusing external validation with internal fulfillment. So how do you avoid this regret? Start by asking yourself a question that most people avoid because the answer is uncomfortable. If nobody knew what you did for a living, if you couldn't tell anyone, if there were no social media to document it, would you still choose your current path? Would you still be working toward your current goals? If the answer is no, or even if you hesitate, that's information you need to pay attention to. The second step is harder. You need to identify what success actually means to you, separate from what you've been told it should mean. And this requires some uncomfortable self-examination. What activities make you lose track of time? What would you do even if you never got paid for it? What did you love before you learned to care about status and money? These questions sound simple, but answering them honestly can completely redirect your life. I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting you quit your job tomorrow to become a starving artist. I'm suggesting you start making small, deliberate choices that align your life with your actual values rather than inherited ones. Maybe that means shifting to a different role within your company. Maybe it means starting a side project that fulfills you creatively. Maybe it means redefining what success looks like in your current position. The specifics don't matter. What matters is that you stop running toward someone else's finish line and start walking toward your own. There's a 75-year Harvard study that tracked people's lives from their teens through old age, and it found something that surprises people when they first hear it. The quality of your relationships is the single biggest predictor of your happiness, health, and life satisfaction as you age, not your career success, not your wealth, not your achievements, your relationships. And yet, when you look at how most people allocate their time and energy in their 30s and 40s, relationships are treated like a luxury that you'll get to later, after you've secured your career and financial future. The elderly people I spoke with who regretted their relationship choices all told variations of the same story. They had chances to connect more deeply with their parents, their siblings, their children, their friends, but they were busy. They had deadlines, they had important meetings, they had career-defining projects, and they told themselves they'd make time for relationships later when things calmed down. But here's the cruel truth about relationships. They don't wait for you. Your parents age whether you're paying attention or not. Your children grow up on their own timeline. Your friendships fade if you don't maintain them. And then one day you look up and realize the people you plan to connect with later are gone, or the relationship has deteriorated beyond easy repair, or your kids are adults now who barely know you. One woman I interviewed, she's 78 now, told me about missing her daughter's school plays because of work travel. At the time, each individual play didn't seem that important. There would be other plays, she thought, other opportunities. But now, 30 years later, what she remembers isn't the business deals she closed during those trips. She doesn't even remember what they were about. What she remembers is the look on her daughter's face when she scanned the audience and didn't see her mother there. That memory has stayed vivid for 3 decades. The insidious thing about this regret is how it accumulates. It's not usually one big moment. It's thousands of small choices. Checking your phone during dinner, saying you're too tired to talk when your partner wants to connect, canceling plans with friends because something came up at work. Individually, each choice seems reasonable. Collectively, they build a life where you're physically present but emotionally absent, where you're so focused on building your career that you forget to build your relationships. Here's how to avoid this regret, and it requires a fundamental shift in how you think about time allocation. Start treating important relationships like non-negotiable appointments in your calendar. If you schedule a dinner with your parents or a meaningful conversation with your partner. Protect that time the same way you'd protect an important client meeting. Because here's what older people understand that younger people don't. In 30 years, nobody's going to remember whether you closed that deal or made that deadline. But your children will remember whether you were there for them. Your partner will remember whether you made them a priority. Your parents will remember whether you called. The second piece is about quality over quantity. You don't need to spend every waking moment with people to have meaningful relationships, but you do need to be fully present when you are with them. That means putting your phone away. That means listening actively instead of thinking about your to-do list. That means asking real questions and caring about the answers. 1 hour of genuine, focused connection is worth more than 10 hours of distracted, half-present time. And finally, stop waiting for the perfect moment to deepen your relationships. There's no perfect moment. Life will always be messy and busy and complicated. Call your parents this week, not when you have more time. Plan that trip with your old friends this year, not when your schedule clears up. Have that difficult but important conversation with your partner today, not when you feel more ready. The perfect moment doesn't exist, and waiting for it is how you end up 75 with a list of people you wish you'd connected with more deeply. Here's a pattern I noticed in almost every interview. When people in their 70s talk about their biggest regrets, they rarely mention the risks they took that didn't work out. They talk about the risks they didn't take at all, the business they didn't start, the career change they didn't make, the person they didn't ask out, the move they didn't make to a city they dreamed about, the creative project they never began. There's something about getting older that makes the road not taken loom larger than any mistake you actually made. And the reason is psychological. When you take a risk and it doesn't work out, you at least have closure. You tried, you learned, you moved on. But when you don't take a risk at all, you're left with an eternal what if. You can spend decades wondering how your life might have been different if you'd been braver. One man I spoke with, he's 72, spent his entire career at a stable corporate job that he found mind-numbingly boring. At 35, he had an idea for a business. He spent months developing the concept, talking to potential customers, even creating a detailed business plan. But in the end, he didn't do it. He had a mortgage. He had kids in school. The job was secure. Starting a business was risky, so he stayed. And he stayed for 30 more years until retirement, wondering the entire time what would have happened if he'd taken the leap. Now, he'll never know. And that never knowing is what eats at him. Not the idea that the business might have failed. He's made peace with that possibility. It's the fact that he'll die without knowing what could have been. That's the particular torture of regret about risks not taken. It's an unanswered question that follows you forever. What makes this worse is that our risk tolerance tends to decrease as we age. In your 20s, you feel like you can recover from anything. In your 30s and 40s, you have more responsibilities, more to lose. By your 50s and 60s, playing it safe feels like the only rational choice. And then you hit 70 and realize that safety is overrated, that security is an illusion anyway, and that you sacrifice possibility for a comfort that never fully satisfied you. So how do you avoid this regret? First, understand that every choice you make carries risk, including the choice to do nothing. Staying in a job you hate is risky. You risk wasting years of your life. Not pursuing a relationship is risky. You risk never knowing what love could have been. Playing it safe feels safe, but it's actually a gamble that your life will magically improve without you taking any bold action. That's a bet you'll probably lose. Second, reframe how you think about failure. The risks that seem terrifying in your 30s, starting a business that fails, changing careers and struggling for a while, moving somewhere new and having to rebuild, these aren't actually that catastrophic. You're more resilient than you think. Most failures are temporary setbacks that teach you valuable lessons. But the failure to try, the failure to take meaningful risks, that's permanent. Third, and this is crucial, take your risks while you still have recovery time. Don't wait until you're 60 to start the business or make the career change. Do it now in your 30s or 40s, when you still have decades to build something or to course correct if it doesn't work out. The window for taking big risks without it being reckless doesn't stay open forever. And finally, ask yourself, what would you regret more? Trying something meaningful and failing, or never trying at all? For the vast majority of people, the answer is clear. They'd rather fail trying than succeed at playing it safe. But they don't act on this knowledge until it's too late. Don't be one of them. There's a disconnect that happens in your accumulation years. You work hard, you save money, you build your nest egg, and you tell yourself that you're doing this so you can enjoy life later. You'll travel when you retire. You'll pursue hobbies when you have more free time. You'll take that dream trip when you can really afford it. And meanwhile, you spend your healthiest, most energetic years sitting at a desk, accumulating wealth for a future that may never come or may come when you're too old to fully enjoy it. The people I interviewed who regretted their financial choices weren't the ones who spent too much. They were the ones who saved too much at the expense of living. One couple told me they spent their entire working lives being frugal, denying themselves experiences, always thinking about retirement. They saved diligently. They reached retirement with a comfortable nest egg. And then, at 67, the husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. All those trips they'd planned, all those adventures they'd postponed, suddenly became impossible. They have the money now, but not the health to use it the way they'd dreamed. This isn't an argument for financial irresponsibility. It's an argument for balance. There's research showing that experiences bring more lasting happiness than possessions, and there's a reason for this. Material things give you a temporary boost, but you adapt to them quickly. A new car is exciting for a few weeks, then it's just your car. But experiences become part of your identity. They turn into stories, memories, connections with people. They shape who you are. The mistake most people make is treating experiences as something you earn after you've secured everything else. But life doesn't work linearly like that. Your body doesn't wait for your bank account to reach a certain number before it starts aging. Your relationships don't pause while you build your career. And some experiences are only possible at certain ages. You can't backpack through Southeast Asia at 70 the way you can at 30. You can't have young children twice. Here's what I learned from talking to people in their 70s. They value different things at different life stages, and the happiest among them the ones who honored those changing values. In your 20s and 30s, experiences with friends and adventure are priceless. In your 30s and 40s with young children, time and presence matter more than money. In your later years, health and meaningful connections become paramount. But if you spend your early decades sacrificing experiences for money, thinking you'll make up for it later, you're making a trade you can't reverse. The way to avoid this regret is to implement what some call a die with zero mentality, though I prefer to think of it as living richly across your entire lifespan, rather than deferring all enjoyment to the end. This means taking that trip, even if it sets back your savings goal by 6 months. It means spending money on an experience with your children, even if it's not the most efficient use of funds. It means recognizing that the memories you create at 35 with your 7-year-old are worth far more than the slightly larger retirement account. A practical framework. Allocate a specific percentage of your income to experiences and protect that allocation the same way you protect your retirement contributions. Don't let lifestyle creep eat into your experience budget, and be strategic about it. You don't need to spend a fortune to create meaningful memories. A weekend camping trip with your children can be more memorable than an expensive resort vacation where everyone's on their phones. The key insight is this: money is a tool for living a good life, not the goal itself. And a good life is built on memories, experiences, connections, and growth. If you reach 70 with a full bank account but an empty memory bank, you've optimized for the wrong thing. This is perhaps the most subtle regret, and in many ways, the most profound. It's about living your life on hold, waiting for some external validation or perfect condition before you allow yourself to be happy, to pursue your dreams, to live authentically. Waiting until you lose weight to date. Waiting until you have more money to enjoy life. Waiting until you retire to pursue your passion. Waiting until you feel ready to take that leap. Waiting until circumstances are perfect to make a change. What people realize too late is that this permission they're waiting for, it never comes. Because the permission needs to come from you. And if you're waiting for external circumstances to align perfectly, you'll wait your entire life. Life is never perfect. You'll never feel completely ready. There will always be a reason to postpone. And then one day you're 70 and you realize you spent your entire life waiting to live instead of actually living. The people who expressed this regret most painfully were the ones who deferred their authentic selves. The man who stayed in the closet until his 60s because he was worried about what people would think. The woman who never pursued art seriously because she didn't think she could make money from it. The person who stayed in an unfulfilling relationship for decades because leaving felt too scary. They were all waiting for some magical moment when it would feel safe enough, easy enough, right enough to be themselves and live according to their true values. But here's what they learned. That moment never arrives on its own. You have to create it. You have to give yourself permission, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Your parents won't give you permission to disappoint them. Society won't give you permission to be unconventional. Your fear won't give you permission to be brave. If you're waiting for external permission to live authentically, you're surrendering control of your life. The psychology here is about our deep need for approval and our fear of judgment. We're social creatures, and we're wired to care about what our tribe thinks of us. This served us well evolutionarily, but in modern life, it often means we conform to expectations that don't serve us, and we suppress parts of ourselves that don't fit neatly into others' expectations. And the cost of this conformity becomes clear only decades later, when you look back and realize you never really lived as yourself. Avoiding this regret requires radical self-acceptance and a willingness to disappoint people. You need to accept that you can't make everyone happy, and trying to do so will make you miserable. You need to recognize that the people whose approval you're most desperate for probably aren't spending much time thinking about you anyway. They're too busy managing their own lives and insecurities. And you need to understand that the cost of living inauthentically is far higher than the cost of other people's disapproval. Start by identifying where you're waiting for permission in your life right now. Where are you telling yourself, I'll do that when? Where are you conforming to expectations that don't align with your values? Where are you suppressing your true self because you're afraid of judgment? These are the areas where regret grows silently, year after year. Then start taking small steps toward giving yourself permission. You don't have to make dramatic changes overnight, but you can start expressing your opinions more honestly. You can start pursuing that hobby you've been dismissing as impractical. You can start setting boundaries with people who drain you. You can start saying no to obligations that don't align with your values. Each small act of self-permission builds your confidence for larger ones. And remember this, the judgment you're so afraid of, most people are too preoccupied with their own lives to judge you as harshly as you fear. And the ones who do judge you harshly, they're usually projecting their own insecurities and regrets. Their judgment says more about them than it does about you. Don't sacrifice your one precious life trying to appease people who aren't even paying that much attention anyway. Here's what ties all 5 of these regrets together. They're all about deferral. Deferring your authentic success for conventional success. Deferring relationships until your career is established. Deferring risks until you feel safe. Deferring experiences until you have more money. Deferring living fully until you have permission. It's all deferral, all postponement, all, I'll do that later. And the brutal truth is that later often never comes. Or it comes when you no longer have the health, the energy, the opportunities, or the people to make it meaningful. The 70-year-olds I spoke with weren't mourning the things they did wrong. They were mourning the life they postponed. You're standing at that fork in the road right now. Down one path is a life where you're constantly deferring, always waiting for the right moment, always prioritizing safety and convention over authenticity and meaning. That path ends with regret. Down the other path is a life where you make deliberate choices aligned with your actual values, where you prioritize what matters over what impresses, where you take meaningful risks, where you invest in experiences and relationships, where you give yourself permission to live fully right now. The path you're currently on is determined by the small decisions you make every single day. Every time you choose work over family, you're taking a step down one path. Every time you defer an experience because you're saving for later, you're choosing a path. Every time you play it safe instead of taking a meaningful risk, you're choosing. The good news is that you can change paths. You can start today. You don't need to quit your job or sell everything and move to Bali. You just need to start making different choices, prioritizing differently, allocating your time and energy in ways that align with who you actually want to be at 70. Because here's the final truth. You will be 70 someday if you're lucky, and that 70-year-old version of you is looking back at you right now, hoping you make different choices than the people I interviewed, hoping you don't waste decades climbing the wrong ladder, hoping you prioritize relationships while you still have them, hoping you take the risks that could make your life extraordinary, hoping you create experiences instead of just accumulating money, hoping you give yourself permission to live fully, right now, today. That future version of you is counting on the choices you make today. Don't let them down.